Dexter Morgan and Joe Goldberg, a battle of two obsessive and calculated serial killers, each brilliant in their own twisted ways, each with secrets they'll kill to protect. A clash between a careful, code-driven monster and an unpredictable manipulator. In this video, we'll be tackling the question, who would win between Dexter Morgan and Joe Goldberg? With the final season of You coming very soon, and Dexter Resurrection coming out this summer, I thought it would be fun to put the two killers against each other. Mind you, I want this to be as interesting as possible, so I'm not going to put young or old Dexter into the fight. I think the best version to use would be the season 6 or 7 Dexter, and for Joe, let's use his current version at the end of season 4. Let's set the stage. Dexter Morgan, the Bay Harbor Butcher, a forensic blood spatter analyst by day and a vigilante by night. A hunter with precision who only kills those who deserve it by his code. Then we have Joe Goldberg, a man whose weapon is obsession. He's capable of slipping through society undetected and can deceive and manipulate those around him to come out on top. So let's take a deep dive into each of their characters. We'll talk about their strengths and weaknesses, as well as their feats, and finally, we'll decide who would win in a seasonal face-off. Starting off with Dexter, he's a genius forensic scientist. Being a killer himself, he can easily reconstruct crimes and put together any messages, puzzles, or patterns associated with others' killings. This makes him even more dangerous as a killer, since he knows exactly what guys like him look for, making him nearly impossible to catch. In terms of his combat, we know that he knows advanced jujitsu, and that he's able to take down trained killers, mobsters, and other psychos with efficiency. He's an expert at restraining victims before they even know what's happening. In terms of who he kills, Dexter only kills the guilty, those who fit the code. And this code gives him great strength, as it forces him to be careful, meticulous, and knowledgeable of his victims' lives. He doesn't just kill on impulse, he follows patterns, studies routines, sets traps, and eliminates all loose ends before making a move. And despite his lack of emotional depth, Dexter can pass as a loving brother, father, and friend. He wears the mask of a normal man flawlessly. Only in rare cases does someone see through it. In terms of Dexter's weaknesses, there's really only one, but it's a big one. As a kid, Harry taught Dexter the code and also taught him to blend in with the rest of society. To blend in, Harry suggests that Dexter builds a cover life, one that seems innocent and acts as a mask to cover his true darkness. But through the course of the show, Dexter actually grows to like his cover life just as much as his real one. In other words, it was becoming real, and he deeply cared for his sister, his wife, his kids, and his life as a forensic analyst at Miami Metro. And anyone that could jeopardize his loved ones or his identity has proven to be Dexter's biggest concern. In other words, Dexter would do anything to keep his secrets hidden and his loved ones safe. As for Dexter's feats, his kill count is in the hundreds, with almost all of them being killers who were clever enough to avoid the consequences of the justice system. Some of Dexter's biggest kills include Brian Moser, his long-lost brother who turned out to be like him as a killer, but not trained with any code, so Dexter was forced to outsmart him and put him down. The Trinity Killer, a successful serial killer who got away with hundreds of kills for decades, was finally caught and put down by Dexter. Jordan Chase, a rich motivational speaker on the surface, who behind the scenes abused and killed countless women with his childhood friends, until Dexter served them justice. And Travis Marshall, a ruthless God-driven killer who was obsessed with fulfilling tribulations to end the world. Not to mention, he was also able to turn the entire police department as well as the FBI onto Sergeant Dokes, when they were getting close to discovering that Dexter was the Bay Harbor Butcher. He also was able to outsmart La Guerta and take her out of the picture even when she had almost undeniable proof that Dexter was the Butcher seasons later. Moving on, let's talk about Joe. Joe's greatest weapon is not his strength, but his ability to become exactly what his target needs. He can worm his way into anyone's trust. He's also very obsessive. When Joe fixates on someone, he studies every detail about them, every habit, every vulnerability, overall making them predictable to him. Unlike Dexter, who maintains a functional social mask, Joe thrives in his deception. People genuinely trust him, and even when bodies start appearing, Joe is somehow always the last person they suspect. Like Dexter, Joe eliminates his threats, but when the danger gets too hot, he can literally uproot his life and even fake his death to get away to a far place under a new identity. He's an expert at disappearing. Or at this point in the story, he has billions and can make everything go away with a little bit of money. One thing that can be debated about Joe's character is whether he's just some weird stalker psycho or a social genius. He knows exactly how to act and what to do to keep someone under his spell, and combining this with his obsessive nature, he would tailor their lives just the way he wants it, by killing their boyfriends, friends, father, or anyone that could stand in his way. And just as they feel suspicious or sense that something is off, Joe gaslights, manipulates, and reassures to keep them in the game. Joe is also very fond of books and literature, so it's very easy for him to create narratives to frame others, get out of trouble, or even stage a convincing suicide. But on to Joe's weaknesses. For one, he's a very impulsive killer. Unlike Dexter, who completely vets his victims, prepares, and removes all ties that could lead back to him, Joe is simply not as careful, which makes him easier to catch. When Joe kills, it's very spontaneous as a result of his emotions, or personal to the degree that they stand in his way of trying to get with Beck, or Love, or Natalie, or Marianne, or Kate. Which brings me to my next point, that Joe is obsessive over too many of these women. Like literally every season, he finds 2 or 3 new people to call you and obsess over them, even when he had a good established relationship already. All of this bouncing around makes him vulnerable to be exposed. And also, are we just not going to acknowledge that Joe is mentally insane? In season 4, he meets a circle of rich figures, one of which he completely made up in his mind, Reese Montrose. Reese killed several members of this rich circle. All the while, he texts Joe with blackmail of his past, forcing him to get rid of bodies and frame the others. It turns out, this version of Reese never existed, and it was Joe who had been killing them all along. Now, knowing at the end of season 4 that Reese is not real, but a manifestation of his evil side, it makes Joe more like Dexter and how he talks to Harry. But this doesn't mean that Joe is not still mentally ill. In terms of Joe's feats, he has collected quite a number of bodies, but not nearly as many in quantity or quality compared to Dexter. I mean, Joe's average victim is someone like Peach Salinger, while Dexter's average victim is someone like Little Chino. But Joe has made some pretty impressive kills, like outsmarting Love in the season 3 finale and taking out the powerful Tom Lockwood in season 4. He was also able to flee his house after killing Love and successfully fake his death and attain the new identity of Jonathan Moore. And of course, his new you accepts him for what he is, and he was able to get away with it all thanks to her billions, which he now has access to. Now, as for who would win between the two, I have 2 answers. One being that Joe would be on Dexter's table in 1, maybe 2 episodes max. Dexter is simply unmatched. He's taken down hundreds of killers that are at or perhaps a little below Joe's level. To Dexter, Joe is just his average kill. Joe is not careful enough as a killer, and Dexter, being a killer hunter, would happily get the job done. Dexter overpowers Joe physically, and with his sneaky methods, would have Joe on his table before he could even comprehend the situation. Dexter would not even have to exploit any of Joe's weaknesses because of how much more experience and skill he has than Joe. I would imagine the situation going down like, say Joe was in Miami chasing down another you. She likes him and thinks he's nice, but she has a boyfriend. Joe kills the boyfriend and gets with the girl. One of the girl's friends starts to get suspicious of Joe, so he kills her and makes it look like a suicide. And over the course of the next little while, Joe slowly takes out a bunch of people who stand in his way to keep the girl trapped with him. Dexter, who notices all of these dead people working on each of the crime scenes as the forensic team, notices the pattern. Before long, with Joe's sloppy cover-ups, Dexter would put together the clues that lead to Joe. If you've seen Dexter, you'd know that Dexter often gives minimal input into solving a lot of homicide cases, as he wants to have the killer all to himself, to please his dark passenger. To make sure he follows the code, Dexter would sneakily break into Joe's home and find his box of trinkets and trophies. Once he had his proof, he would then set up the kill room, sedate Joe unsuspectedly, and finish the job. Now, I did say that I have 2 answers, and that's because the first one I gave did not consider the end of season 4. You see, one would think that a serial killer with billions of dollars in the bank would be more dangerous and more protected than your average Joe killer. So now considering this, how different would the interaction be? Well, I think this would turn out to be something like season 5 of Dexter. Joe in this situation is very similar to Jordan Chase, and we remember how Dexter beat him. It was because Chase ditched his security to personally deal with Lumen, the one who got away. Dexter was then able to track down Chase, free Lumen, and kill him. I think this could go the same way. If Dexter was able to find Marianne and lure Joe, since she was the only you that got away from him. But this plan may not work, as Joe was actually fine with letting her go. But then maybe she could confess about how he killed her ex, and that he followed her to Europe to kidnap her. But Joe and Kate would probably be able to bury it and cover it up. How would it continue from there? Well, knowing Dexter, even if Joe was surrounded by bodyguards, we know that he would do anything to take him down. But he wouldn't be able to do it all by himself. He would enlist the help of his Miami Metro family to gather all of the evidence they would need to bring Joe in. And when Dexter is alone with him, I hope you guys enjoyed this showdown. Dexter and You are 2 of my favorite shows, and putting the 2 killers against each other was really fun. Let me know if you think this interaction could have gone differently down in the comments. Don't forget to like the video if you enjoyed, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new uploads. With that, I'll see you guys in the next one.